The queen offered me her daughter's hand in marriage as a reward for saving her from pirates, and I made the decision that would make me either famous or dead when I looked past the bored young princess and said, I would rather marry you, your majesty. Captain Marcus Stone stood tall and straight before two towering thrones carved of golden stone. The throne room was a sea of shimmering alien creatures dressed in elaborate finery. Nobles chattered around him with their own languages, clicking like castanets or flowing like silk across his ears. Queen Seraphina Vel'Thane sat high on the larger throne, her silver skin glowing under soft lights like starlight through fog. Her white hair cascaded down one shoulder and pooled at her feet in a waterfall of ageless beauty. From behind her regal mask, deep violet eyes stared back with a weariness that pierced Marcus's soul. Princess Thessaly sat on the lower throne beside her mother, looking much younger than her actual centuries. She was beautiful, there was no denying it, but she wore boredom like armor, picking at chipped nail polish as if toying with his life had been nothing more than a tedious chore for someone of her station. Marcus' heart raced, not from fear he faced down pirates and alien warlords before, but anticipation. He knew the queen would honor him somehow, a medal, maybe even just a handshake or words of gratitude. But as she stood, clearing her voice to speak over the murmuring crowd, Marcus felt an odd sense of foreboding. Captain Marcus Stone, Queen Seraphina said, and his name echoed through the room like thunder. You saved my daughter from certain death. By our laws, such heroism demands the highest reward. Marcus bowed deeply but kept his gaze steady. Serving was reward enough, your majesty. The queen's voice dropped slightly as she continued, nevertheless, I offer you my daughter's hand in marriage. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Princess Thessaly looked up briefly from her nails and met Marcus' eyes for just a moment before returning to them with disinterest obvious on her face. Marcus glanced at Princess Thessaly, boredom clear, no desire whatsoever. He then turned his attention back to the queen, who had stood regally while he studied them both intensely. She carried an empire alone for 500 years, and never once saw people look past her crown or title as a woman. Marcus felt like someone needed to notice the loneliness hiding behind that mask. He bowed again, your majesty, and paused before continuing with deliberate words, I am deeply honored but must decline. I refuse marriage forced upon unwilling partners. Silence fell instantly. Princess Thessaly looked at him in surprise, for once agreeing on something. She actually nodded slightly, her gaze softening briefly, then hardening to indifference again. Queen Seraphina's hand rose, and the room went quiet, save a single breath from somewhere. You refuse my daughter? Her voice cut through the silence like ice shards slicing flesh. Marcus kept his eyes locked with hers as he said clearly, I do not desire marriage where there is no love or even mutual interest. He paused, then continued slowly, but deliberately, however, raising his gaze to meet her violet irises once more unflinchingly. If you offer instead, Marcus' voice strengthened, and the air seemed to hum with tension, then I would rather marry you. Someone nearby fainted dramatically onto a velvet cushion. Princess Thessaly stared at him like he'd grown a second head, while her mouth hung open in shock. Queen Seraphina's gaze turned from cold ice into something unreadable. The room erupted again, this time in chaos, but not fear for Marcus anymore, though it seemed as much to him now that people didn't know how to take his boldness or what exactly had just offered. Marcus did not look away first. He held her eyes like a battle stance between two opponents sizing each other up before the clash. The massive throne room emptied quickly after Marcus's audacious proposal, leaving only a hush behind, as if it had drained along with the crowd's presence. Queen Seraphina remained seated for what felt like an eternity, her gaze locked onto Captain Stone, until finally she dismissed everyone else in one sharp command that cut through the silence like cold steel. Retire. The guards and nobles filed out swiftly, their eyes wide as saucers at this unexpected turn of events. Even Princess Thessaly left without a backward glance, leaving only Marcus and Queen Seraphina facing each other across an expanse once crowded with alien dignitaries. Alone now in the vast hall lined by golden thrones under starlight, like glow lamps, they moved closer to each other, as if drawn together by unseen threads of fate. The queen descended from her throne slowly, gracefully, a liquid silver trail behind her footsteps on gleaming stone floors. She stopped 3 feet away from Marcus, not even a step forward, but enough for the space between them to feel charged and palpable. "You would marry a woman 500 years your senior," she stated flatly, more assertion than question. Her deep violet eyes bore into his with an intensity that made every breath he took seem measured against ancient standards. Marcus met her gaze unflinchingly. "Age is time. I care about character." She circled him slowly, then, a predator examining prey, or perhaps something far less threatening, a woman studying someone she does not understand. Her movement was graceful and deliberate, as if the world around them had slowed to accommodate this critical moment. "My daughter is young," Queen Seraphina began softly, but with sharp clarity. "Beautiful, fertile. You could have children, a dynasty." She paused for effect before continuing in that deep, resonant tone. "Why refuse her?" Marcus turned slightly, keeping the queen within his sight line as he spoke candidly. His voice was steady and unyielding against hers. "Your daughter is young, adorable even, but she plays at being royal. I saw it during your ceremony. She picks her nails like there's nothing to care about in this universe. Her heart isn't here yet." Marcus paused again, considering his words carefully before continuing with a solemnity that touched the queen deeply despite its bluntness. "You have carried an empire alone for 500 years, he said firmly. "That takes strength, wisdom, endurance. I find all of those attractive." His blue eyes never left hers as he awaited her response. Queen Seraphina's composure cracked ever so slightly at his blunt appraisal, a rare vulnerability flickering across her face in micro-expressions caught only by this soldier's keen gaze. "No one has looked at me," she admitted softly, almost to herself, "more than him after centuries of silence on such topics from all but the most respectful." Marcus took another step forward into that space between them where no others dared tread, his voice steady as he met her now lowered eyes with confidence. "Then, everyone else is blind." He looked up sharply at this unexpected assertion and said nothing for several moments, searching Marcus' face. His courage seemed to fill the void left by the retreating crowd. "You will grow old," she started hesitantly, then stopped abruptly, as if words failed her here, before adding more firmly, "wither, die." She paused thoughtfully, considering what little chance he had offered against such stark realities of life, but his steady eyes held no flinch or fear, for it seemed to promise something rare and precious, even within the cold logic of survival. "Then you will remember me fondly." Marcus shrugged casually yet profoundly, impacting her deeply internal thoughts. "Is that not better than 5 more centuries alone?" Her gaze softened momentarily, if only just, but enough that she blinked slightly, unsure how much longer could such isolation last, without its toll becoming too great to bear even by a queen. "You ask nothing?" Her voice carried an undercurrent of disbelief, along with cautious hope threading through her question. "No power? No wealth? Influence?" Marcus considered his options carefully, and then spoke directly. "I ask one thing." His resolve hardened further as she tensed, awaiting the inevitable catch. But he delivered instead something that truly surprised even himself. "That you let me stand beside you," Marcus explained firmly, looking into her eyes with an open honesty rare enough in such a room to cause actual chills. "Not behind you, beside you, as partners." The silence stretched between them as she absorbed this unexpected and entirely foreign offer, considering its merits deeply, while her own composure slipped further than it had since the passing of time itself began to weigh heavily on her alone. Then she did something that shocked him into stillness. She smiled, a real smile, unlike any expression he'd seen from behind those regal masks before. It transformed her face in ways no one else could have done, leaving his breath caught somewhere between awe and disbelief at such rare beauty shining forth unmasked finally, after so long hidden. Captain Stone, she addressed him formally still, but with an unexpected warmth lacing through each syllable now. You are either the bravest man I've ever met, or the most foolish. He grinned back, that soldier's grin tinged slightly by genuine relief and newfound hope shining brightly in his eyes. Probably both, Your Majesty. She laughed then, a sound so rare, no one present could recall hearing her laugh before. When had she last laughed? It felt like an eternity ago. Queen Seraphina's eyes shone with unshed tears of joy or shock at this unexpected turn of events, while Captain Stone returned to his usual posture, standing strong and steadfast in whatever might come next. In that moment, both found something they thought lost long before, the promise of true partnership amidst alien grandeur and ancient loneliness. The next day, Captain Marcus Stone found himself cornered in a dimly lit corridor of the palace. His path was blocked by Princess Thessaly's guards, and there stood the princess herself, her eyes narrowing into slits as she approached him menacingly. You are using my mother, she hissed through clenched teeth, her tone dripping with accusation and barely concealed anger. Marcus sighed deeply, bracing himself for this confrontation. I do not want a throne, princess. I am a soldier. All I ever wanted was a partner. Thessaly scoffed derisively at him. A partner? She is the queen, the ruler of an entire galaxy. She does not need a partner, she spat. Marcus looked into her eyes steadily and held his ground despite the tension that crackled between them. Have you ever seen your mother laugh? He asked quietly, knowing full well what impact those words would have on Thessaly's carefully guarded emotions. She faltered for an instant before shaking herself out of it with a sharp intake of breath. What? 3 days here, Marcus continued calmly, not breaking eye contact even as her anger began to waver and turn into something else entirely, uncertainty perhaps. And I have made your mother laugh twice. When was the last time you saw her do that? Thessaly opened her mouth, then closed it again quickly before finally managing a whisper more than a word, clearly struggling with the unexpected reality of his question. Marcus nodded solemnly, pressing on gently but firmly, as he could see she needed to hear this from him now. She's been alone for 500 years, carrying everything herself, trusting no one. She needs someone who understands that burden and can share it. Thessaly's anger dissipated further at his words, until all that remained was a deep sense of shock coupled with a hint of awe. But she is ancient, Thessaly began hesitantly, after another long moment of silence. She will outlive you by millennia. Marcus nodded, accepting this harsh truth without flinching or hesitation in the slightest. I know, he said simply. And if I can only give her decades of happiness before that happens, is it not better than centuries more spent alone? Thessaly stared at him incredulously for several long seconds as she processed what Marcus had just admitted to and realized the sincerity behind his words. It was like trying to digest a revelation so foreign yet so beautifully honest in its simplicity. You really mean it, Thessaly finally whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, but heavy with emotion. You actually care about my mother. Marcus smiled sadly at that admission from someone who held such disdain initially towards his perceived motives. I have been alone too, he explained gently, as if speaking to an old friend rather than the guarded princess of this alien world. Just years, not centuries, like her mother had endured, but enough time apart to understand what loneliness felt like. He would never wish it on anyone, especially someone who has carried such isolation for so long. Thessaly was quiet again, before nodding slowly and waving away her guards with a gesture that said much more than words ever could have between the two of them now. If you hurt her, Captain, she warned without raising her voice any higher than necessary, I will kill you myself. Marcus bowed respectfully to acknowledge this solemn promise from someone who had every right to be wary given his unexpected proposal and history with both her mother and herself just days ago, when their first meeting occurred under far less amiable circumstances. As I would expect nothing less, he agreed calmly before straightening back up again. At the corner, Thessaly paused for a moment more, turning halfway towards him, as if to give Marcus one last chance at understanding something she seemed newly aware of within herself and her family dynamics over this short amount of time. "Captain," she asked hesitantly, though there was no fear in those deep blue eyes now staring directly into his own unflinching gaze. "Make my mother laugh again," Thessaly requested earnestly, a small smile touching the corners of her lips for just an instant before she turned away entirely. "Only because you want to see it, Princess," Marcus replied softly, with genuine warmth in those words and sincere intent behind them. There would be many more confrontations ahead, countless challenges, both political and personal, that loomed large on this alien world's horizon, but one by one he would face each of them, knowing there was now hope where none existed before, thanks to an unexpected turn of events brought about purely through sincerity and understanding over any other form of ambition or greed. The wedding stunned the galaxy. News spread across 1,000 worlds like wildfire, sparking awe and disbelief among countless alien species. A human marrying the eternal Queen of Vel'Thane? Impossible, unprecedented. The ceremony was broadcast everywhere, its every detail dissected in forums and taverns alike. As Marcus stood before her with his hand extended, Seraphina felt a strange sensation wash over her, a warmth she hadn't experienced since long before she ascended to the throne 5 centuries ago. Her heart skipped a beat when their fingers touched. When he looked into her eyes with unwavering sincerity and acceptance, something changed in her face. The mask she had worn for so many years cracked open, fell away entirely. "I vow," Marcus began without hesitation, "to be your partner for as long as I have breath left to draw, to love you fiercely and protect you from all that would harm us." Seraphina felt a sharp intake of air when the vows were said with such conviction, such raw emotion she hadn't thought possible in this time or place. The Queen responded, "I vow, Marcus Stone, that I will share my burdens, joys, and sorrows with you. Even if our time together is brief, it will be a lifetime well lived." As their vows resonated through the sacred hallways of Vel'Thane's throne room and out across every screen in the kingdom, something inside Seraphina shifted irrevocably. The years of solitude began to feel less like chains binding her than they did an open door finally being pushed wide. When she took his hand once more as their bond was sealed with a kiss before all assembled, Seraphina could see it, the realization dawning on everyone's faces. This was not the marriage they thought. Marcus had changed everything, and he didn't even know how yet. The crowd cheered wildly when the Queen allowed herself to smile openly for what felt like an eternity of moments. They watched her laugh freely, in a way so unfamiliar that people wondered if this was someone else entirely wearing the regal form they knew only too well as their ruler. Princess Thessaly, though initially conflicted and even angry about Marcus' presence and role within her family dynamic, found herself crying openly at how genuinely happy she had never seen her mother before. The tears were for more than just joy. They held gratitude and a profound sense of closure that came with seeing the woman behind all duties finally shine through. In the days following their wedding, Marcus adapted quickly to life in Vel'Thane's royal palace. He attended council meetings alongside Seraphina, offering military advice where needed, but also challenging advisors who had grown complacent over time, something Princess Thessaly hadn't seen since before her father died decades ago. One night, after a particularly trying meeting that ended with the Queen laughing more than she ever had in public memory, and Marcus smiling beside her as if he knew every secret hidden behind those violet eyes, Seraphina pulled him into one of their private chambers. The silver glow from outside bathed them both as they sat side by side, looking out over the kingdom. "Why?" she asked softly, after a long moment of silence between them. "Why did you choose me?" Marcus turned to her then, holding her close with reverence and tenderness that shone through his battle-weathered hands as he traced patterns on her back. "Because when I looked at your daughter," Marcus answered honestly without missing a beat, I saw someone waiting to be rescued. She inhaled sharply at this admission, but didn't pull away from him. When I looked at you, though, he continued softly, eyes never leaving hers, I saw someone who had been rescuing everyone else for 500 years. You needed someone to stand beside you instead of behind. Seraphina's breath hitched as understanding flooded her expression. Shed carried the weight alone, so long, because that was simply expected of a queen. But Marcus's words cut through centuries of solitude like sunlight piercing dark clouds. The queen kissed him then, lips pressing softly against his ingratitude and adoration that had never known such freedom or form before this moment. I waited 500 years for someone to see me, she whispered against his mouth, after pulling away slightly, but still within touching distance. Marcus smiled down at her warmly as he brought their foreheads together, gentle silver skin against weathered human. Sorry, I am late, Marcus replied genuinely, eyes full of all the sincerity and respect that had drawn him here in the first place despite initial expectations. She laughed, truly laughed, for what felt like an age but was really just a few seconds more before their lips met again, this time with passion born from knowing every day together counted as its own victory over centuries of silence and solitude. That laugh, the one that still made Marcus's heart skip beats, now resonated through the halls, echoing off walls where no such sound had ever been allowed. In those quiet moments, they both knew something vital, yet simple. Loneliness didn't have to be their future anymore when there was someone brave enough to fight for a new beginning instead.